Welcome to Celtic Tomes, bringing you readings from bygone books.
Welcome to Celtic Tomes, readings by Gary and Ruth from the classic books of Celtic lore and study. Book 3, Chapter 4 of British Goblins, Welsh Folklore, Fairy Mythology, Legends and Traditions by Wirt Sikes.
Book 3, Chapter 4, The Welsh Christmas, including Nadolig, The Welsh Christmas, bell ringing, carols, dancing to the music of the waits, an evening in Carmarthenshire, Shenkin Harry the preacher and the jig tune, Welsh morality, Eisteddfodau, decorating houses and churches, the Christmas Thriftbox, the Colliers star, the Plygain, and the pagan origin of Christmas customs. Section 1. We come now to the most interesting holiday season of the year, by reason of its almost universality of observance among Christian peoples, and the variety of customs peculiar to it. In the land of Arthur and Merlin, it is a season of such earnest and widespread cordiality, such warm enthusiasm, such hearty congratulations between man and man, that I have been nowhere equally impressed with the geniality and joyousness of the time. In some Catholic countries, one sees more merriment on the day itself. Indeed, the day itself is not especially merry in Wales, at least in its outdoor aspects. It is the season rather than the day which is merry in Wales. The festival is usually understood, throughout Christendom, to include 12 days. The Welsh people not only make much of the 12 days, but they extend the peculiar festivities of the season far beyond those limits. Christmas has fairly begun in Wales a week or two before Christmas Day. The waits are patrolling the streets of Cardiff as early as December the 5th, and Christmas festivals are held as early as December the 19th, at which Christmas trees are displayed, and their boughs denuded of the toys and lollipops in which the juvenile heart delights. After Christmas Day, the festival continues. I know not just how long, but apparently for weeks. The characteristic diversions of the Christmas season are in the main alike in all Christian countries. In Wales, many well-known old customs are retained which in some other part of Great Britain have disappeared, such as the mummers, the waits, carols, bell-ringing, etc. Not only do the bell-ringers of the several churches throughout the Principality do their handsomest on their own particular bells, but there are grand gatherings at special points of all the bell-ringers for leagues around, who vie with each other in showing what feats they can perform, and how they can astonish you with their majors, bob majors, and triple bob majors on the brazen clangers of the steeples. At Cow Bridge, for instance, on Christmas will come together the ringers from Aberdare, Penarth, St Fagans, Llantrisant, Llanblethian, and other places, 30 or 40 in number. And after they have rung till the air above the town is black with flying clefs and quavers from the steeples, they will all sit down to a jolly Christmas dinner at the Bear. The bands of waits, or pipers of the watch, who wake the echoes of the early morning with their carols, are heard in every Welsh town and village. In some towns there are several bands and much good-natured rivalry. The universal love of music among the Welsh saves the waits from degenerating into the woe-begone creatures they are in some parts, where the custom has that poor degree of life which can be kept in it by shivering clusters of bawling beggars who cannot sing. Regularly organised and trained choirs of Welshmen perambulate the Cambrian country, chanting carols at Christmastide, and bands of musicians play, who in many cases would not discredit the finest military orchestras. Carols are sung in both Welsh and English, and generally the waits are popular. If their music be not good, they're not tolerated. Irate gentlemen attack them savagely and drive them off. Not exactly that boot jacks and empty bottles are thrown at them, but they're excoriated in letters to the editor, in which strong language is hurled at them as intolerable nuisances, ambulatory disturbers of the night's choir, and inflictors of suffering upon the innocent. But such cases are rare. The music is almost invariably good, and the effect of the soft strains of melodiously warbled Welsh coming dreamily to one's ears through the darkness and distance on a winter morning is sweet and soothing to most ears. Sometimes small boys will pipe their carols through the keyholes. The songs vary greatly in character, but usually the religious tone prevails, as in this case. As I sat on a sunny bank, a sunny bank, a sunny bank, all on a Christmas morning, 3 ships came sailing by, sailing by, sailing by. Who do you think was in the ships? Who do you think was in the ships? Christ and the Virgin Mary. Both English and Welsh words are sung. Sometimes a group of young men and women will be seen dancing about the waits to the measure of their music in the hours ayont the twal. In one aspect, the Welsh people may be spoken of as a people whose lives are passed in the indulgence of their love for music and dancing. The air of Wales seems always full of music. In the Christmas season, there is an unending succession of concerts and the miscellaneous entertainments of which music forms a part. While you cannot enter an inn where a few are gathered together without the imminent probability that one or more will break forth in song. And by this is not meant a general musical howl, such as is apt to be evoked from a room full of men of any nationality, when somewhat under the influence of the rosy god, but good set songs, with good Welsh or English words to them, executed with respect for their work by the vocalists, and listened to with a like respect by the rest of the company. When an Englishman is drunk, he is belligerent. When a Frenchman is drunk, he is amorous. When an Italian is drunk, he is loquacious. When a Scotchman is drunk, he is argumentative. When a German is drunk, he is sleepy. When an American is drunk, he brags. And when a Welshman is drunk, he sings. Sometimes he dances, but he does not do himself credit as a dancer under these circumstances. For when I speak of dancing, I do not refer to those wooden paces and inflections which pass for dancing in society, and which are little more than an amiable pretext for bringing in contact human elements which are slow to mix when planted in chairs about a room. I refer to the individual dancing of men who do not dance for the purpose of touching women's hands or indulging in small talk, but for the purpose of dancing, and who apply themselves seriously and skilfully to their work, to wit, the scientific performance of a jig. I chanced to pass one evening, in the Christmas time, at a country inn in a little Carmarthenshire village, remote from railways. Certain wanderings through green lanes, and the lanes were still green, although it was cold midwinter weather, had brought me to the place at dusk, and being weary, I had resolved to rest there for the night. Some local festivity of the season had taken place during the day, which had drawn into the village an unusual number of farmer folk from the immediate neighbourhood. After a simple dinner of a chop and a half-pint of cwrw da, I strolled into what they called the smoke-room, by way of distinguishing it from the tap-room adjoining. It was a plain little apartment, with high-backed wooden settles nearly up to the ceiling, which gave an old-fashioned air of comfort to the place. 2 or 3 farmers were sitting there, drinking their beer and smoking their pipes, and toasting their trouserless shins before the blazing fire. Presently, a Welsh harper with his harp entered from outdoors, and seating himself in a corner of the room, began to tune his instrument. The room quickly filled up with men and women, and though no drinks but beer and pop were indulged in, Save that some of the women drank tea, Bacchus never saw a more genial company. Someone sang an English song with words like these. Thrice welcome, old Christmas, we greet thee again, with laughter and innocent mirth in thy train. Let joy fill the heart and shine on the brow, while we snatch a sweet kiss neath the mistletoe bough. The mistletoe bough, the mistletoe bough, we will snatch a sweet kiss neath the mistletoe bough. The words are certainly modern, and are certainly not of a high order of literary merit, but they are extremely characteristic of life at this season in Wales, where kissing under the mistletoe is a custom still honoured by observance. There was dancing, too, in this inn company, performed with stern and determined purpose to excel by individuals who could do a jig and wished to do it well. The harper played a wild, lilting tune. A serious individual who looked like a schoolteacher took off his hat, bowed to the company, jumped into the middle of the floor, and began to dance like a madman. It was a strange sight. With a face whose grave earnestness relaxed no whit, and with firmly compressed lips and knitted brow, the serious person shuffled and double-shuffled, and swung and teetered, and flailed the floor with his rattling soles, till the perspiration poured in rivulets down his solemn face. The company was greatly moved. Enthusiastic ejaculations in Welsh and English were heard. Shouts of approbation and encouragement arose. And still the serious person danced and danced, ending at last with a wondrous pigeon wing and taking his seat exhausted amid a tremendous roar of applause. Scenes like this are common throughout Wales at Christmas time, and they contrast strangely with the austerities of religious observance which are everywhere proceeding. But there is not so wide a chasm between the two as would exist in some countries. The best church members frequently do not deem a little jollity of this sort a hanging matter, and there are ministers who can do a double shuffle themselves if the worst comes to the worst. A worthy pastor in Glamorganshire related to me, with a suspicious degree of relish, a story about two ministers who were once riding through a certain village of Wales on horseback. One was the Reverend Evan Harris, and the other a celebrated old preacher named Shenkin Harry. As they rode on, Harris noticed his companion's legs twitching curiously on his horse's sides. "Why, what ails your leg?" he asked. "Don't you hear the harp?" was the reply. "In the public house yonder. Oh, it makes my old toes crazy for a jig." But the moral tone of Wales is certainly better on the whole than that of most countries, better even than that of Great Britain generally, I should say. There is, I know, a prevailing impression quite to the contrary, but it is utterly absurd. It's an impression which has grown, I imagine, out of the English injustice to the Welshmen in former times, allied to English ignorance in those times concerning this people. Until within the last 100 years, English writers habitually wrote of Wales with contempt and even scurrility, but no one can live in Wales and not form the opinion that the Welsh are, in truth, an exceptionally moral people, and the nature of their public entertainments throughout the Christmas time enforces this conclusion. Stendhal's declaration that in true biblical countries religion spoils one day out of 7, destroys the 7th part of possible happiness, would find strong illustration in Wales. It's not my purpose to argue whether the illustration would prove or disprove Stendhal's assertion, though one might fairly ask whether religious people are not perhaps as happy going to church on Sunday as irreligious people are in staying away. Section 2. Let it not be supposed that there is any lack of amusement on Christmas Day for people who are willing to be amused in a God-fearing manner. Although you cannot go to the theatre or the circus, you can have a wide liberty of choice among oratorios, concerts, examinations, exhibitions, Eisteddfodau, and other odd diversions. Concerts especially thrive. The halls in which they are held are decorated with evergreens, and the familiar custom is in Wales habitually and commonly associated with the ancient Druids, who viewed the green twigs as the symbols of perennial life. Thus a peculiar poetic grace rests with a custom beautiful in itself, and capable in any land of being poeticized by anyone poetically inclined. Many of those unique gatherings called Eisteddfodau are held in different parts of the Principality, when poetry, music and essays, in Welsh and in English, are put forth by the strivers in these Olympian games of intellect and culture, after the prizes which in Hellas would have given them crowns of olive leaves instead of gold coins of the realm. When Pindar and Sophocles handed in poems, and Herodotus competed among the essayists, and Phidias and Praxiteles among the cutters of stone, there was no Christmas. But it is claimed there were Eisteddfodau here in Wales. Aye, and before that, for has not Herodotus spoken of the British bards who held them? Section 3. In the family circle, the rules which regulate the Sabbath in Wales, which are almost as repressive as those of bonny Scotland, where, by the way, Christmas Day is scarcely observed at all, are relaxed, and the aspect of the home is as bright as can be. The rooms are elaborately decorated with flowers and evergreens, holly and ivy, ferns and rare plants. In Glamorganshire and other of the southern countries looking on the sea, roses and hawthorn sprays may be sometimes seen in full bloom out of doors at Christmas. The decoration of churches is also elaborate beyond anything I've elsewhere seen. It is a sight to behold, the preparations for and the work of decorating a vast pile of ecclesiastical buildings, like Llandaff Cathedral, the huge quantities of evergreens and holly, flowers, cedars, etc., which are day by day accumulated by the ladies who have the business in charge, and the slow continual growth of forms of grace, arches, crosses, wreaths, festoons, green coverings to font, altar, pulpit, choir stalls, pillars, reredos and rood screen, panels faced with scarlet cloth bearing sacred devices worked in evergreen, the very window sills glowing with banks of colour, until all the wide spaces in chancel, nave and transepts are adorned. Section 4. Of common prevalence, formerly, and still observed in numerous parishes, is a custom called the Plygain, or watching for the dawn. This consists in proceeding to the church at 3 o'clock on Christmas morning, and uniting in a service which is held by the light of small green candles made for the purpose. Sometimes this ceremony is observed at home, the people in a farmhouse holding a jollification on the Christmas Eve, and sitting up all night to greet the dawn. If the east wind blew on the Christmas Eve, the circumstance was deemed propitious in this connection. This wind was called Gwyntraid y Meirw, the wind blowing over the feet of the corpses, because it blew towards the foot of the graves in the churchyards. It was also believed that the dumb animals paid their tribute of respect to this night. The bees would hum loudly in their hives at midnight, and the cattle in the cow-houses would bend their knees, as in adoration. A Christmas Eve custom among Welsh Colliers is to carry from house to house a board stuck with lighted candles, or to wheel a hand-barrow containing a bed of clay in which the candles are stuck. This is called the Star, sometimes the Star of Bethlehem, and when stopping before a house the men kneel about it and sing a carol. A like custom exists in Belgium, among children. The purpose is to solicit a rhodd Nadolig, or Christmas gift. Section 5. The British Boxing Day is well known, both as to its customs and its origin. The Christmas box, or Thriftbox, is still to be seen in barber shops in Wales, fastened to the wall, or standing conveniently under the looking-glass among the pots and brushes. At one time, the custom became such a nuisance throughout Britain that an outcry was raised about it. It got to that pass that the butcher and the baker would send their apprentices around among their customers to levy contributions. The English Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, in 1837, sent a circular to the different embassies requesting their excellencies and chargés d'affaires to discontinue the customary Christmas boxes to the messengers of the Foreign Department, domestic servants of Viscount Palmerston, foreign postmen, etc. The nuisance is hardly less prevalent now. The faithful postman in Wales not only expects to be remembered at Christmas, but he expects to be given a precise sum, and if he does not get it, he's capable of asking for it. In one case, a postman accustomed to receive 5 shillings at a certain office and asking for his box was told the usual donor was absent in London, and whereupon he requested the clerk to write up to him in London immediately on the subject. These things strike a stranger as very singular among a people usually so self-respecting. Warnings are from time to time issued on this subject by those in authority, but the custom is likely to survive so long as it is not ranked outright with beggary. Like the Christmas tree, it is a graceful thing among the children, or among friends or household servants, if spontaneous. But as a tax, it is an odious perversion. Among those who last Christmas applied at my house for "his box, sir, if you please," as my maid put it, quite as a matter of course were the postman, the leader of the waits, the boy who brings the daily newspapers, the bookseller's boy, the chimney sweep, the dustman, the grocer's man, etc., etc., not one of whom I'd ever set eyes on. The equal of this I never encountered, except in Paris on the Jour de l'An. Section 6. The pagan origin of most of our Christmas customs is undoubted. Even the cheery Christmas tree is a symbol of heathen rites in times long antedating Christ. The early Christian fathers, in adopting the popular usages of their predecessors and bending them to the service of Christianity, made wondrous little change in them, beyond the substitution of new motifs and names for the old festivals peculiar to several seasons of the year. The British Druids' feast of Alban Arthur, celebrating the new birth of the sun, occurred at our Christmas time and is still celebrated at Pontypridd, Glamorganshire, every year. It begins on the 22nd of December and lasts 3 days, during which period the sun is supposed to fight with the Vagddi, the spirit of darkness, the great luminary having descended into hell for that purpose. On the 3rd day he rose, and the bards struck their harps, rejoicing that the sun had again been found. The Pontypridd ceremonies are similar to those of Midsummer Day, already mentioned. The arch-druid presides in the folds of the serpent circle, when he can get there, that is, for he's old, past 80, and the druidic hill is apt to be slippery with snow and ice at this time of year. He prays to the pagan god, and perhaps chants a poem in Welsh. I give a free translation of this effort as delivered on Sunday, December the 24th, 1876, which proved a mild day, and which I find reported in the Western Mail of the 26th as follows. The day of the winter solstice has dawned upon us. Little is the smile and the halo of hair. The depth of winter has been reached, but the muse of Wales is budding still. Cold is the snow on the mountains. Naked are the trees, and the meadows are bare. But while nature is withering, the muse of Wales is budding. When the earth is decked in mourning, and the birds are silent, the muse of Wales, with its harp, is heard in the gorsedd of the holy hill. On the stone ark, within the circle of the cauldron of Ceridwen, are throned the sons of Awen. Though through their hair the frozen mist is wafted, their bosoms are sympathetic and they rejoice. Peace, love, and truth encircle our throne, throne without a beginning and without ending, adorned with uchelwydd, mistletoe, symbol of perennial life. The throne of the British bard, which remains a throne while other thrones decay into dust around it, an everlasting throne. The great wheel of ages revolves and brings around our festivities, repeating our joys as it does perpetually. Muse, awake, awake, ye harps! Let not any part of the year be forgotten wherein to crown usage, devod, morals, mois, and virtue. The Saviour, Heir, is about to be born of the winter solstice. He will rise higher still and higher shiningly, and we will have again a new year. Haste, hail, haste, falling snow, hasten rough storms of winter, hasten away that we may see the happy evidence of the new year. The Druidic fires of the winter solstice feast were continued in customs like that which survived in Herefordshire until recent years, when on Old Christmas Eve 13 fires were lighted in a cornfield, 12 of them being in a circle around a central one which burned higher than the rest. The circle fires were called the 12 Apostles, and the central one the Virgin Mary. In a shed nearby was a cow with a plum cake between or upon her horns, into whose face a pail of cider was dashed with a rhyming address, and the cow, tossing her horns from her unexpected baptism, naturally threw the plum cake down. If it fell forward, good harvests were predicted. If backwards, the omen was evil. A feast among the peasants followed. In the Plygain, in like manner, survives the Druidic custom of going to the sacred groves before dawn on this morning, to greet the rising of the new-born sun after his struggle with the evil principle.
That was Book 3, Chapter 4 of British Goblins, Welsh Folklore, Fairy Mythology, Legends and Traditions by Wirt Sikes. A link to the full text can be found in the show notes at celtictomes.libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN.com. You can also find all of the names, place names, and other non-English words written down for you in the show notes in the order in which they appear in this reading. If you'd like to comment on this chapter, pop over to our show notes and join in or start a conversation. If you've enjoyed this podcast, why not try our sister podcast, The Celtic Myth Pod Show, which brings the stories of ancient Celts to life with narrative and drama, as well as bringing you modern Celtic music, stories and information. Find The Celtic Myth Pod Show in all the places where the best podcasts hang out, or on our website at celticmythpodshow.com. You've been listening to Celtic Tomes, read by Gary and Ruth. Our theme music is Gander in the Pretty Hole by Slauncher, and a link to their music can be found in the show notes at celtictomes.libsyn.com. This podcast has been produced by The Celtic Myth Show.